The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is a United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast NH. This is a podcast designed by writers for writers on the journey to being published. Joined Mandra Biscornet.
It was so healthy and nutritious.
Deborah Monk.
Can we open each podcast with a dance number?
Shelly Devlin.
It was so full of inspiration and sparkles.
Every Tuesday morning live on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to catch the podcast anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. It's time to be inspired, feel empowered, and be well with the Writer's Block Podcast NH.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra.
I'm Debbie.
And I'm Shelly.
Thank you for joining us at the Writer's Block, where our mission is to inspire, empower, and to help people be well. On today's show, we're going to ask the question, who's driving your story? Is it the character or is it the plot? Because there are basically two different styles of writing. One is character-driven and one is plot-driven. So we're going to explore the difference between the two. Is one better than the other? Is it possible to use both? And try to figure out which Debbie uses.
What the heck we're doing? I think I'm pretty easy.
So let's start with character-driven.
Well, let's say first what plot is, just in case anyone needs a little reminder. Plot is a sequence of events connected by cause and effect, and character is who your story is about. Okay. So if you're writing a plot-driven story, you're going to probably be focusing on the external world. It's going to be very action-oriented, exciting, fast-paced, and how will the protagonist or the hero escape, prevail, or overcome? Whereas if you're writing a character-driven story, then you're more apt to be delving into the psyche. It's going to be about the inner transformation of the character or about the transformation of a relationship between characters. Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea.
So those characters are going to have a lot of layers, a lot of internal
you're going to be a little bit more into, plot will focus on the choices the character must make, and the character type story will focus on how the character arrives at that point, that part of making that choice. Okay. So I think that most people are more comfortable, more natural writing one way or the other. But and Shelly had asked the question, which is better?
Yeah, right. Which is better?
Which is
good
better?
Question, Shelly. You would ask that earlier. And it isn't about which is better. They're both good, and you're going to get a very different feel from the book. And you may, I like both. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like both.
I think with the character-driven one, you're going to get more of that emotional connection with the character. The readers are going to kind of fall in love with the main character.
That you hope that.
Yes, and you do hope that if it's done well.
Yes. And if it's a character-driven story, the hope is that after the book is over, when they close it, that they're still thinking about that character or kind of learning from that character or seeing how the way that character thought, made a difference in their life or can make a difference in their life.
Right. And if it's a book that has a series that keeps the same main character, you want them to fall in love with the main character because then they would continue to want to read what else the character is going to do.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, I think you could have that in the plot-driven as well. That you're going to want to know what happens next, or you're going to want to,
you're going to want to know what happens next.
Well, no, but that's the time the story's over,
Well, right.
Right, but if you have, the character-driven is The Godfather, which is Godfather 1, Godfather 2. Plot-driven is Jurassic Park 1, 2, and 3. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, they're both.
You can have sequels
you must
for
have
anything,
both in all of them.
But let's
you obviously
look at
have
those
characters
two.
in your story.
Right. But The Godfather, you get to know that character and what the inner workings are. Jurassic Park is more the sequence of events and action and twists and turns.
Right.
Would that be a good explanation?
I lost the point of what our question is.
I love it, Deb. There's got to be a balance between both.
Well,
right?
There's absolutely no question a good story is going to have both, because that's the mistake that can be made. The mistake that plot-driven writers make is you can't just have your characters be game pieces. Meaning you can't just have them move, okay, the bank gets robbed, so you move to here. And then, you chase down the robbers, so he gets in the car. You've got to get to know your characters and care about them.
Right.
And the mistake that the character-driven writer sometimes makes is sometimes you meet this really fabulous character, but then nothing happens, so it's boring. Mm-hmm. So I think the importance of this is recognizing what you're good at, what you're naturally good at, and then you have to pull in some of the strengths of the other type. Right. So if it's a character-driven story, you use the plot to develop the character. My novel, Well-Behaved Woman, Coming Undone, is a good example of that because my characters, Mel and Jody, mother and daughter, the point I was making, which of course I didn't know until the book was done, but I was writing about...
Because that's how Deb rolls.
Because that's how I write. But I was writing about intergenerational wounding, how families pass on, just like you inherit the color of your hair and you inherit the shape of your toes from your family, you also inherit, good and bad characteristics of your family and wounds that are passed down from generation to generation and until you heal those. So that's what I was really writing about. And so then I used Mel and Jody to tell that story. That's what I was writing about more than I was writing about Mel and Jody. So I used what Mel and Jody did, how they reconciled and how they got back together. I used the plot to further develop the characters so that you would care about that intergenerational wounding and you would want to see it stopped. Whereas if you're writing a plot-driven story, you want to use the characters to make the plot better. I know I've used this example before, but Lethal Weapon's a great example. He put great characters into a very action. I mean, that is a plot-driven story.
Plot-driven story for sure.
Totally plot-driven story. But he also did a fabulous job with characters, which made it so much more interesting.
Right. So his characters aren't just kind of cardboard cutouts type of thing of good cop, bad cop. You did get
way
invested
more deep
in them.
Yes. Yeah. So you want to use both. That's what's going to make a really good story. And you just have to, it does help if you get a sense of what you're better at. Because then you can say, okay, that's going to kind of roll naturally through the story, so I probably don't have to worry about that so much. I don't think that I have to worry about my characters having angst or being bitchy in their head. I think that's just a given. I don't have to work on that. No. That's not a problem. So I have to work on that on the plot. Mm-hmm. So those characters can't just be talking heads. Right. They have to be doing something. Right, but I'm going to use what I have them do. I'm going to use to develop the character.
So is Mandra's story then a plot-driven story? Just another love story?
Wow. Now that's well. I mean, do you want my honest opinion?
Yes, of course I do.
More important, does Mandra want my honest opinion on the radio? Or
the radio.
The truth is, I mean, we've said before in this podcast, Mandra wrote like a prescription pad. So she wrote the plot out. Her plot was created for her by real life because she's writing a memoir. But she wrote the plot,
We did this and this happened.
Right. Yep. We went here, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and this is how we reacted to that. And so the whole time we've been saying, but we want to get to know you. We want to care why that's what's happening. So I want to
get to know the characters.
Right. And care.
Yes.
Right. And you can care about bad characters. Mm-hmm. So it isn't that they had to be perfect all the time. And I think there was one point where I even said, Mandra, you've painted yourself quite the Zen wife managing this whole family.
Is that the point where you wanted her to be naked when she woke up that morning, but she had pajamas on?
I wanted her to be vulnerable. Yes. or I just wanted her to be real. I wanted to get a feel of what was that moment like. She was telling us how she, woke up in the middle of the night and had to call 911. Well, I woke up in the middle of the night and had to call 911. I don't care. That's not that interesting.
And the Mandra impression coming from
yes, right?
Hilarious.
But then once we got to know them, and I wanted to see a little bit of her vulnerability, her mess, her not when she was her best. Right. Because that's when you care about
real life.
people.
Yes.
Right.
When they have those weaknesses or that fragility.
And so
So would you say it is plot driven, and I had to go back and work on the characters?
Yes, and that plot driven is what you're good at. It is what you're good at, like organizing and everything. That's what you're good at. So the reality is, Mandra and I together would probably write a fabulous book.
Let's do it.
Love it. There you go. There's part of your...
Yes, when we finish all these.
Right. But when you initially thought about writing the book, Just Another Love Story, you were writing it for your son so he would know his parents and what they've been through. Mm-hmm. So your initial thought was that you were writing it character driven, but when it came out of you, it came out plot driven.
I think I wanted him to know
what happened.
So those are events, assuming that he would know his parents because
he does.
I've now spent 6 years with the boy, that he would just get to know us. So yeah, and it wasn't a conscious choice, but yes, that's how I wrote it, as very sequence, based, and had to go back and put in the characters.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, who you're writing for will determine how much you put that in.
Right. So when it became maybe other people would be reading it who didn't know us, then it became more important to develop those characters.
Right. Right.
Because if a family member reads it, they already know us.
Right.
Hopefully they already care about us, so we don't have to add that in. To just be prerequisite.
You have to already like me. Oh, yes. I would love that. Can I?
Now, what about Shelly?
Definitely character driven, and having to put the plot in. I think. No? Deb, where's your honest opinion?
We need Deb's honest opinion.
We need Deb's honest opinion.
Mandra, what's your opinion first?
I mean, I see character driven because
Definitely.
she's choosing the people that she wants to highlight and how it relates to her.
Well, she doesn't really want to put in how it relates to her.
No, we're making her do that.
It, right.
Yes.
I'm not saying, but that wasn't, I know, and that's a whole other podcast on resistance, because it's not that I don't want to be in there, but the story is about somebody else. And I agree with you that the thread between me and the client that sits in the chair, there is a thread. I'm not saying I resist that, but the initial is these are the people that made some kind of influence on me or other people, or vice versa. So I think it's more character driven, and then having to insert plots as we go.
Yeah, I think I do.
And rough stories are so much easier to insert the plot.
But I think that one of the things that is giving you having you stuck, is holding you back, is you've got a Cheryl story, which is a fabulous story, and then you have your chock full of nuts story about your dad, which is one of my favorites,
right?
And then you have the funeral story, and so are you right? The way that you have it right now is it's kind of random stories, just kind of vomited onto the page here and there,
right?
But what's the coagulator?
Well, there isn't going to be a coagulator, because it is going to be a book of vignettes of stories.
But see, you're not writing that.
But I am writing that.
Well, maybe look
at that.
Maybe that's what you're writing, but it isn't what you've been telling us you want to write. Maybe that's where the problem is. Maybe you do want to just write a book of short stories.
I do. That's what I'm doing.
But you're not. Because
we're going to have this on the Resistance podcast, apparently, because...
Yeah, we'll have to do this on Thursday. Yeah, we'll have to remind us to go over this on Thursday, because you're not. You're not just writing random short stories.
Okay, Deb. We'll talk about it on Thursday.
Deal. All right, well, now, just let's go over to... I've created a little game for us.
You could have pushed a little harder, and we could have had our first crier.
Really?
If we're going to have a crier...
It's not going to be Shelly.
I want it to be me.
Shelly doesn't cry. No.
Oh, nice.
I only cry if I'm completely pissed off. That's when I cry.
So if Shelly cries...
If I'm sad, no.
Well, I guess you should have pushed. No.
So if I make Shelly cry, I'm going to be bawling, because I'll know I've made her really mad, and I don't want to do that. Okay, let's go to our game.
I forgot we had a game.
We have a game.
I thought we were wrapping up.
We're not wrapping up.
Game.
No, we have plenty of time left.
I know.
Here's the game. The game is called... Are we plot or are we character driven? So I'm going to read you. We've talked before about when the back of your book, when you flip over the back of the book. Now, if you're traditionally published,
yes.
So my very first book, which was traditionally published, the back of Searching for Julia Stone was written by someone else.
Right.
So you read the back of the book. I have never been a back of the book reader. That is not how I decide if I'm going to read a book. I go to the first page and I read the first paragraph, and I'm either pulled into the action of what I want to know what's going to happen next. That's going to be a plot-driven book. Or I'm pulled into the character, and it's going to say, oh, I kind of want to get to know this crazy person. If I'm not pulled in, I put the book down, because I want to know what I'm getting. Whereas when you read the back of the book, you're going to get a description of the story. You don't know which one you're getting. Okay. So these are the first lines of 4 different books. And listeners, hope you'll play along. Jonathan, play along, and you guys are going to vote. All right. I'll tell you who wrote it afterwards.
So our choices are character-driven or plot-driven?
Yes.
Okay.
How can I be a widow? Widows wear horn-rimmed glasses and cardigan sweaters that smell like mothballs and crepe paper skin and have names like Gladys or Midge and meet with their other widow friends once a week to play cards. I'm only 36.
Character.
Clearly, right?
All I could think about was widows also smell like bad cheese.
Bad cheese.
Sorry.
All right. We apologize to any widows from the show. All right. So that was Lolly Winston's Good Grief. Loved her book. All right. Second one. The 29th punch. Oh, sorry. The first line is just over the border from the Marine base in El Paso, Texas. The 29th punch landed just above Jack's eye and spun him around, making him see stars. His eyebrows split open so the stars dripped blood. Maybe now the guy would feel good enough about himself that he would just leave. Punch 30 hit him in the side rib. Guess the guy wasn't feeling good enough yet.
Character.
Plot.
Oh.
Interesting. Tiebreaker, Jonathan.
Plot.
So we have 2 plots and 1 character. So, all right, I have to admit, that's called Tango Bravo Dance, written by yours truly, Deborah Monk.
I recognize that. So hopefully you know the answer.
Well, I do know the answer, but the good part is, in a way, you'd almost think I must have done a pretty good job because one person thinks it's character. So I must have put a little bit in about the character, which I did.
The first line was plot and the rest of it was all character.
Well,
not really.
No.
Every description of the character had to do with the direction of the story.
No, she's right. The 29th punch landed and spun him around, making him see stars. His eyebrows split open so the stars drip blood. That's all about what's happening. When we go to maybe now the guy would feel good enough about himself that he would just leave. That's inside of him. That's character development. Because you kind of wonder why is this guy counting how many?
It has no character motivation. It's just this is an additional piece of the story. Doesn't give you really a window into this Jack person.
It absolutely does. And if you read further, but anyway, so you're all right.
It's like a good action scene where you're also in the guy's head a little.
Right.
Which is...
And I've had trouble writing this book because it's more plot, and that's not my strength. All right, next question. Oh, well, this isn't my life. That's the first thought I've had every morning for the past I don't know how long. I squeeze my eyes shut, hoping I'll fall asleep and wake up on the right side of my life, but my conscious and unconscious do battle, and I lay in limbo.
Character.
Totally character. That's me again, searching for Julia Stone. Don't we have a shameless plug?
Yeah, it should be playing right now.
All right. Shame.
It's the best you get.
All right. Okay, here's the last one. Just after 4 a.m. under a starless sky, a man in a well-worn tweed coat and black knit cap crossed Broadway onto Front Street, humming a tune as he strolled south to Sydney Square. He stopped at the iron fencing and looks around the park and the surroundings with purpose. He was still humming tunelessly and gripping a 9mm gun in his right-hand pocket.
Plot.
Absolutely plot. James Patterson, the 17th suspect.
Yeah, all his stuff is...
he's the master of plot.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because he writes very short chapters.
Yeah.
It's very fast-paced, and it just goes from one thing to what happens next to what happens next.
Surprises and twists. And
yes, and it's all a roll down the stairs, and that's why it's a good plot, because it's just... so we all did really well on our game. That was fun.
So any answer was a good answer.
Yes. And so Shelly also asked the question... Do you remember the other question you asked?
I said, what's better? And I thought we went over that.
Well, you asked memoir. Is a memoir plot or character?
And I think we could do both. I mean, it could be either.
It could be either, right?
Right? Because mine was more plot-driven and had to be worked on the characters. Yours, I know we got into a discussion about, but was more character-driven, and you had to create the plot. So...
Right. And the real answer is you really want both. You want a good plot and you want good characters, because either one without the other is going to fall flat.
Right. But you're probably going to tend to have more of one. Like you seem to be a lot more character.
Right. And you seem to be more plot. And that's how we both know that's the part that we both have to work on, is the other part. That's what's going to make us better and have that multi-dimensional layers to our story rather than just being, good guy gets in a fight.
Right. Jonathan, are you character-driven or plot-driven?
Don't care.
Don't care.
You should care.
It doesn't matter to me. Depends on what the story is. Depends on... I wouldn't say I'm better at one than the other. Because I look at the whole plot sometimes as a character itself. So that would be plot driven, right? So I could just outline the entire plot and see where I have to plug in the characters to make that plot work.
So have you planned your plots? Like, would you say you know what you are, or you could flip back and forth?
I can flip back and forth. I prefer to have an outline to work off of.
Okay.
So I started writing my latest blah, 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 and I just started writing because there was a story in my head, and then I panicked because I really didn't know where everything was going to lay out, so I started writing the outline, and now I feel better about myself.
So are you still writing?
Of course I'm still writing.
Oh. When are we going to get to see pages?
Never.
Why are you writing then? Just for yourself?
Not for you.
Who are you writing for? Yourself?
Of course.
Oh, you're not writing to put it out ever?
Just my cathartic release. That's
what
it's narrative therapy.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Huh. I did pick up a few of his pages, and he said he had a gorgeous wife who was so stunning and thoughtful and kind.
I don't think that was my book you picked up.
Maybe that was Shelly's husband's book.
Is he writing too?
He should write.
Yeah.
She wants him to write.
He's awful handsome with them big muscles of his.
He'd make a nice, there'd be a good cover. Actually, speaking of good covers, Shelly was going to write a book with him.
Yes.
And she was going to do a photo shoot of the two of them that would make a stunning cover.
Yes, it'll happen.
But she has 2 photo shoots. One could be on the book cover and the other one could not.
Well, no, it can still be on the book cover.
It would have to be very shadowed.
At the Moonlight Reader down the road. Triple X.
Or the censor.
No.
The censor black thing.
Yeah.
Very artistic.
Yeah, with lots of shadows.
Oh, ladies. All right. Well, I think that is it for us on character-driven versus plot-driven. We thank you all for listening. And please check out the Writer's Block NH Facebook page and find our Writer's Block podcast on your favorite podcast catcher. May you be inspired, feel empowered, and be well. Attention cigar smokers or even friends of a cigar smoker. If you're looking to relax with a nice premium cigar or looking for a great gift for a cigar smoker, this is the gift that keeps on giving. Our friends at twoguyscigars.com have created the Cigar of the Month Club. For just $19.99 per month, you or a friend will receive 4 different premium handmade cigars every month, and shipping and handling is included.
Contact twoguyscigars.com. That's the number 2, guyscigars.com, and go to the Cigar of the Month Club. You can stop anytime because there's no contract, but you won't. This is a tremendous deal for our listeners. Go to twoguyscigars.com. That's the number 2, guyscigars.com, and click the Cigar of the Month Club.
At the same time, if you want to learn more about the cigars you receive each month, you can smoke along with them on our own podcast called The Cigar Authority. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a nice premium cigar from our friends at twoguyscigars.com.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.